Hello, everyone. Welcome to another interview. I have Scott Jenkins on the phone. Scott is a Bigfoot enthusiast, soon to be a podcast host on Bigfoot, and he has a special interest in the woo effect or the woo-woo effect that I know nothing about. I should know something about it because Bigfoot is the topic of my YouTube channel, but I just don't have time to read up on all that stuff because I'm actually working too. But Scott offered to come on, and I was glad to oblige him, and I can't wait to hear what he's got to say and explain this woo effect because I know there's some people out there like me who have no idea what it is. Half of our audience are not really up on Bigfoot. They just like good stories, and I think you might learn something with this. So, Scott Jenkins, how is everything?
Oh, man, it's good. How about yourself?
Yeah, doing great. It's hot down here. Man, it's like, I keep looking at the forecast, and it's saying low 80s, but I'll damn well tell you it's 95 degrees outside, and it's humid as it can be.
That's how it is here. I'm in Indiana, and humidity is just off the hook. Anyway, you're talking about that woo-woo effect. I've been a Bigfoot enthusiast for quite some time, over 40 years now. People always mention woo-woo, and I didn't know what it was myself for a long time, and it sounded like something derogatory, because what happens is you've got all these people that follow one directive, and it can only be this one thing. And then when you step outside of those boundaries that people have created, like people have said, they have cloaked, they come through portals, they have a sixth sense, and what a lot of people in the old school of Bigfoot just being an animal, they started saying woo woo. Oh, you're one of those woo woo guys, like woo woo, what's this guy talking about? That's where that term pretty much has come from. I myself have become so open to any ideas that I don't dismiss the woo-woo effect. And then as far as the woo-woo effect, it's like, I've had some encounters and some experiences, which I'll get into in a minute. But part of the woo-woo, because you hear all these people saying that, well, I saw this thing, it looked like Predator, it cloaked. Or I saw it come through a portal. Or, I followed 15 tracks and then it disappeared completely. Those are just some examples. And then sometimes people have feelings with Bigfoot, good and bad. I think that their sixth sense is so leaps and bounds beyond ours, because that's what they have out there in the wilderness, is their sixth sense, just like any other animal. Everything is built on hearing and sound and vibrations and all of that. So why wouldn't they be way more advanced than us, And you talk about, what do you call it? When infrasound, okay? Right. Infrasound. Right. That's also another thing that they've learned to do, and there's also animals that do it. And what I believe, and I've heard this now, this isn't from my conclusion, but I've heard from so many different people that I've put this together in my head. Number one is that Bigfoot is out there for sure. Can he kill you? For sure. Can he be nice to you? Probably, for sure, because we find a lot more murders and things like that. But I think they have such a sense of what's going on inside of you. Like when I walk into the woods, I believe that if a Bigfoot is there, especially if like it's the same area that I'm going, Bigfoot can, and other animals, not just Bigfoot, but they can feel your vibration, your heart. You have an electric pulse through your body. Okay, you walk in, and if your sixth sense is so attuned to hearing and feeling reverberations of all different kinds, it's like, oh, that's that big dude that I saw that one time. Yeah. Maybe that's his heart, his algorithm, or whatever. That is a deep sixth sense, And I watched another researcher who put wolf poison, or he tried to bait some wolves, and he buried poison underneath a piece of meat, about a foot and a half down, and the wolves came up on it. And obviously, they smelled the meat, and 9 out of 10 looked around like something is wrong, and walked away from it. So they know something. And there was another guy who said that it's possible that your body's putting off not DNA but particles, which it does put off particles because we're electric. and they can tell your intentions. Some guys go out hunting and they'll bring their rifle up, and a Bigfoot will get pissed off. If they put the rifle down, the Bigfoot usually relaxes. I think that he can feel your intentions. He can feel, is this guy going to try to kill me? Is this guy, what's his thought pattern? Those kind of things are part of the woo-woo effect. Because a lot of people don't believe in the woo-woo, but I've seen so many strange things and so many stories. And, just like all your other people who listen to this, I love the stories because I can relate to them. Now that I've had some experience, like I relate to them and I feel for them. That's part of the woo-woo effect. It's just so much, energy and stuff. And when you can change vibration, vibrations can change molecules. So if there's, cloaking or whatever they're doing, if they can get the right, it's like playing a guitar. I'm a musician. If I can get the right vibration, you get the sweetest sound or the nastiest sound, and you're changing that sound by, adjusting the vibration, and you're actually changing molecules at the same time. You don't know it, but you are.
Yeah.
Especially in a flesh type person. That's some of the craziness with the woo-woo. So a lot of people, they ask me about, what do you think it is? Or, like everybody asks, what do you think it is and all that. My personal experience is that they're way more than an animal. I believe in God, and I believe that God has put all these creatures on our earth. It's like, people say, well, why do you think we're the only people in the universe? Well, why do we think we're the only smart things on this planet?
Yeah.
We're in a different role. We've evolved this way. They've evolved that way. And it doesn't mean that they're stupid for any reasons. They just do things different. They don't have the knowledge that our brains have come to collect.
Right.
So that is, yeah.
I'd just like to discuss a couple of things. The other day I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he's very involved in the Christian church, and that's his faith. And it's mine too, but he's very religious. He's a real religious guy. And we were talking about my channel, and I said, I really want to do some alien stuff and UFO stuff. And he's like, oh, you can't. That's not godly things to talk about. I said, look, why would God give us an imagination to think of things that are possible? Everything's possible. Anything's possible.
Right.
And who's to say that he doesn't have another creation somewhere else that he's just not let us on to? He could have 1,000 creations out there similar to this, or exactly
different.
Yeah, exactly like we've got going on. So that's one thing. The other thing is the sixth sense in animals. I hear these stories a lot. I get a lot of these stories where they vanish and I've got a good friend in Indianapolis who, pretty close to you, who is big into the woo stuff, and I've never understood it. We've never had time to really talk about it, but he calls them the Xanu. Is that a name that sounds familiar to you?
No, there's all kinds of names out there. I don't know that. I don't know what Xanu is.
Okay, well, he's into that. Matter of fact, he's having some heart trouble right now, and I just want to say hi to him, hi to my buddy Dennis up in Indianapolis. I just want to tell him I'm thinking about him. But he's into that, and there are a lot of people that are. And you may have heard some of my commentary on some of these things to where I have to think of things in a logical and common sense order. And the only thing I can compare Bigfoot to are other animals. Now, as far as the sixth sense go, I can tell you without a doubt, game animals that we hunt absolutely have a sixth sense. You can be in a deer stand that has been there for years. The deer, they know it's there. They're used to it. You're up there camouflaged as heck. They never look at you, but they'll stop. They'll stop, and they know that something is wrong in that area. They know it.
Yeah, they can feel that,
All you have to do is watch them, and you're not 100% made, but you're about 50% made. And all they've got to do, if you make a move, they've got you, and they're gone.
Oh, they've got you.
So what you're saying is completely logical to me. Now, the cloaking and stuff, could animals have, hair or molecules that they can change and reshape? And just like a chameleon does that. There's a lot
octopus.
Octopus. There's a lot of reptiles that can do it. So, yeah, I just wanted to make that little commentary because I know people have heard me say that, and I've never even mentioned the woo-woo effect.
Right.
But it's along those lines. So I appreciate you explaining that, and it makes perfect sense. Now, before we get too deep into this discussion and you tell us about your encounters, I want you to talk about your podcast that you have coming up on this topic, because I think there's a lot of people listening that would be interested in that. You want to take a few minutes and kind of explain what you're planning and what's going on?
Sure. It's not completely about all woo-woo. What I'm doing is I'm letting people who are writing stories, can be fictitious or non-fictitious, because I don't know the difference, and I'm going to put those out there, similar to what you do on your show, but it can be about any kind of cryptid animal, Loch Ness monster. It could be dogmen. It can be a chupacabra. It can be a two-headed snake, ghosts, aliens, UFOs, anything that has like some kind of spooky aspect to it, or just weird, or kind of woo. The alien subject that's 100% woo-woo. Because there's everything is woo-woo in an alien type situation.
Right.
As far as we know, because we don't classify them as like, this is just a big ape or whatever walking around. But my podcast is called The Woo-Woo Effect. So it's a platform for people to write stories about any of these creepy things. And it's not necessarily about Bigfoot. I leave that for you, because you're the best Bigfoot man. I'm telling you.
No, I'm not.
You are. Well, it's your nature and your graciousn's, which has inspired me to start my podcast, for one thing, because I love listening to you, and you're always so gracious and just nice, and that's what I aspire to be. Like your buddy who's very religious. I'm pretty religious myself, but I don't take God out of the equation with these other beings such as a Bigfoot, because who's to say he doesn't? There's so many animals that are being discovered constantly, and look at the history of this. The written history in paintings and Indians, and something's up with it.
I agree.
I am not going to let them scare me out of the woods. And I'll tell you, when I tell you a little bit about my story, I've heard people recounting their stories and crying and have PSTD and all that. I just have my faith in God, and I believe that, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but I am not going to fall down and let something push me out of my woods. I can live with this thing if they allow it, but I will not, quit hiking, hunting, fishing, and all that kind of stuff, because I had a Bigfoot experience, Bigfoot's out there hunting and hiking and fishing himself, and he sees us, and what they think, like, there's this creature, I know he can be dangerous. So anyway, that's the woo-woo effect pretty much, and my podcast should be coming out next week, and it's the Woo-Woo Effect. That's WOWO.
Tell people where they can look you up.
There's a platform called Anchor, which is put on by Spotify, so you can look me up in Spotify. And it is the Woo-Woo Effect, WOOWOO Effect. And my email address is WOOWOO Effect podcast@gmail.com.
Okay, great.
So if you know anybody that's got some crazy stories and wants to write, or put their hand out at writing, the first one that I'm doing is an author from Indiana, and he's written a book called Gazelle, A Tale of the Dark Space Force. And I'm going to be reading that one, and I'm pretty excited about this one, because this is a published writer, and he sells on Amazon, and he's given me permission to read his book as my first go, and maybe in a few episodes, but I think it's going to be pretty cool, because you're going to be able to sit back, throw your feet up, and close your eyes and turn this movie on. You know?
Sort of like a free audio book on your first couple of podcasts. I think that's a great idea. Great idea.
Yeah, it's going to be like that.
In regards to people sending stories in, look, you're gonna get some response, because there's a lot of people out there that want to write. They love to write, especially. I think there's some upcoming authors that would probably enjoy or appreciate that you read maybe the first couple of chapters of their book and promote their book? And
if anyone has, you can just tell me what it is that you want me to put out. If you have a book and you only want me to read part of it, then yeah, we're good with that. If you want me to read the whole book, then we'll have to put it in episodes. But yeah, I think it's a good platform, and it's going to give, also kids. I think you've had some stories from kids.
Yeah.
And kids, their imaginations are fantastic. I think it's going to be good. That's the Woo Woo Effect podcast, and that'll be on Spotify coming next week. And if you know anybody that's writing or wants to write about any of these spooky kind of topics, send it to my email address, which is woo-woo-effect-podcast@gmail.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the description for that if I can remember.
Okay.
It's not that I won't do it. It's just I'll have to make myself a note to remember to do it. I've got so many to do. Okay, well, that's great. Man. That's you guys look for the Woo Woo Effect on Spotify. Scott's going to do a good job. I can't wait to hear it myself. All right, now let's move to the stories here. That's what everybody comes to my channel. They want to hear stories. And tell us about some of your encounters, Scott.
Okay, 1979. I graduated high school. I had a motorcycle. I was free. So I decided I was going to go up north to this state park just because I was riding around. And I was about 100 miles from home, I guess. And it was called Potato Creek State Park. I was driving to this park, and I passed the park entrance. I turned on the next left road that I could. The entrance was on the left, so I turned on the next left thinking, maybe I could go. There's a back entrance. I'd never been there before. Some way I could get in. But I kept going for a couple miles, and I couldn't see any way to get in anywhere, so I decided to turn it around. And I turned around, and I stopped, and I lit a cigarette. I was smoking back then. I was 18 years old and full of it. And I was just sitting there, and I look over to my left, and, there's a cornfield on the right side. In between the cornfield is a strip of grass, probably 20, 30 feet long, and then woods. A lot of farmers do that. They'll put that space between their crops and the wood just to make a defining line, and they can bush hog that to keep the growth back. So I'm looking down there, and I'm looking about an eighth of a mile, kind of a sloping down away from me, and I see this big black thing, and I take a double look at it, and I'm trying to figure out what it is because nothing's making sense. Well, what it was a gorilla that was sitting on its butt with its back to me, reaching up into the stalks of corn and ripping them off and, I guess, eating them. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is a gorilla doing loose out here? My bike's still running, so I floored it out of there. I was thinking, because the next thing in my head was like, he could get up and maybe catch me. And so I took off. I went back to the main road, and I found the park entrance, and I pulled into the park entrance and told, there's two wardens there. They said, I told them, I said, you need to go over to this spot over here because there's a gorilla loose. And they said, a gorilla, and they started chuckling. And I said, yeah, you need to check with the zoo and see if one of their gorillas got loose. And they said, there's not a zoo within 100 miles of any direction from here. And I was like, okay. And we have this place in Peru, Indiana, which is a circus resort for circus acts and animals through the winter, when they're not traveling. And I was thinking, well, then it might have gotten away from the circus. And they laughed at me again. And then I, of course, started thinking, what circuses carry gorillas? None. Then they were real adamant about where was it? Where did I see it? How far? Which way did I turn? Where did I go? And they said, okay, we'll check into it. And they said, get on out of here. And so I got on out of there into the park and was just driving around, joyriding. And I forgot about it for years and years and years and years. I just kind of let it go out of my mind. But I always had Bigfoot in the back of my mind. You see the Patty film and all that. And, sometimes you're just unsure of what you saw. And, if you tell people, like, many of your stories, they laugh at you. But you know what you saw, of course, like all these people do. So that went on for years. And then I was living in Missouri at one point in Herman, Missouri. One night I went outside about 3 o'clock in the morning to use the restroom, because the stars are bright. There's no ambient light around to knock your stars out, and something beyond this bush which was 20, 30 feet in front of me, huffed and snorted. And so I picked up a rock about softball size, and I flung it through that bush as hard as I could. I heard it hit something, and then whatever it was gave another huff, and then took off running towards the barn. This is 3 o'clock in the morning, so I really can't see. It got to that barn so fast that it didn't make sense to me. The barn was down a hill. Where I used to live was there used to be a mule skinner's place. There was a series of barns down there. So that went away. I talked to another buddy. He said, "I was just a deer huffing at you, a buck." I said, "Well, I've heard about the bucks," but so I put that out of my head. Years gone by, and my kids are grown men, and we decided we were going to go out and look for Bigfoot. It was an exciting thing to do, fun. So we went to this place. It's part of the Hoosier National Forest. We found structures. We found broken sticks, bent sticks and broken, all facing the direction, certain direction. We found, the sticks that were broke 7, 8 feet high. You go on down another 50 yards, there's another one, exact same direction, kind of like a line, like someone took a chalk line, but they were in broken sticks. If you could put a chalk line on it, you could look down this line of sticks and it would be uniform. So we didn't know exactly what that meant. And then we found some structures. How people talk about teepees. Well, we didn't really find teepees. We found more like wigwams, which are short, like 4 or 5 feet high and bigger and fat. That's what we had found. We didn't find any teepees. And then we did see some of the X's, and we found a tree that was in the branch of 2 other trees in between the fork. And this tree that had been broken off and put in this place between these 2 trees on about a 45-degree downhill. It must have been hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And, and we're talking where we hike, we do deep woods backpacking, and it's 4 miles just to where we get to where we like to camp. And then we walk another 4, 5, 6 miles out there. And so we're out in the middle of nowhere. No man's back there. And then you see these things and you're like, what in the heck? And I'm not sure exactly the timing of all this, but I know we saw all these structures. And then we had this eerie feeling, and we kind of got lost for a while. I finally found a way back. There's fire trails all over the place, and this is like foothills. In Indiana, we don't have mountains. We have foothills. Well, they get pretty steep, pretty good size. So I'm walking. I found the fire trail, and we're walking along, and I come up on this pile of crap, big pile of feces, and it's still wet. It's full of rabbit hair or deer hair, skin, but you could tell it was just vacated. I mean, that's kind of weird, that it was put in the middle of the trail and vacated out of someone's body, like, here, you want some of this, and unbeknownst to me, my oldest son, in his smart way, he let us go ahead, and he took crap right beside it. So, but he didn't tell me this until, that wasn't until probably 2 months ago. I didn't even know that. So those are another couple other things. So another time we went in 12 o'clock at night, and we're carrying all this gear, and we get tired, and it's kind of misty, and we decided, here's a flat spot. Let's just drop right here, because we usually go in and then create a spot for us to be. So we put our tent up and got in it. My youngest son, Tyler, he decides he's going to go out and do some tree knocking. So he takes an axe. We had a fisher's axe, and he goes and he finds a tree that he likes that reverberates real good. And mind you, this is 12 o'clock at night, 12:30, something like that. And he beats this tree, the customary 3 knocks, whatever it is. And he did it again, and maybe one more time. And we just packed it up, and we all went to sleep. About an hour and a half, 2 hours later, I'm awoken by my youngest son, Tyler, who did the knocks. All 3 of us are in this tent. He's got his finger up to his mouth in the shush position, and I'm looking up. He's on his knees, and I'm looking up at him. I was like, what the heck is he doing, And he just points to his ears like, listen. Lo and behold, here comes a knock. It seemed like it's pretty far away, but it was definitely a knock or a couple knocks. And so he said, did you hear that? Yeah, I heard that. And so we waited about another 20 minutes or so. here comes another succession of knocks, but this time it is too close for comfort. We're talking 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, 6 miles out, 5 miles out from the parking lot where there's no civilization out that way anyway. And we're like, okay, who's going to come and do this and reply to our knocks at 3:30 in the morning, So we started listening, and whatever it was sneaking up on us. And it would move. It'd go about 10 minutes, it wouldn't move, and then every once in a while you would hear just the slightest little stick break. And I mean slight. And then I was waking up my oldest son. He wouldn't wake up. I don't know why, but I kept shaking him, and finally he did. In the woods at night, you can't really sound travel, so it seemed like it was right on top of you, but it was probably 50 yards away. Whatever it was stepped on a bigger stick, but it had to know that we were in this thing. Here we go with the sixth sense thing. It had to know that we were in there.
Yeah.
It felt us. And so we're all three sitting up on our knees going, what in the heck? What are we going to do? Okay. And my youngest son's got his hatchet and a machete. Check this out. This is the first time that we've never been without weapons. We've always carried firearms for, in case we run into a cougar or, a hog or whatever. Never thinking that we would ever shoot at a Bigfoot or need it for protection from that, because this is still fantasy, to us. Not to me, but for the kids, it's so out there that you can't believe it's really happening until it does happen. So this thing, all of a sudden, I can't tell if it stood up or what it did, but it did that traditional scream, bloody murder, howl, and guttural sound that went right through our bodies. I mean, it shook your lungs, it shook your heart, and it just lets you. And what it does is it makes you feel like, okay, we didn't have any weapons, and my youngest son just looked at me and he just set his machete down, and we kind of looked at each other like, whatever this is. If it wants us dead, we're dead. It puts that fear into you. It's a primal fear. And it's, if it was a man and he was talking to us, we'd try, make an action plan. But when this thing screamed at us, you knew that whatever it was, because we did not see it, it meant business. And it had to have the lungs of a cow and the voice of a freight train. It was just, and it did it twice at us. We were just sitting there, and thank God we didn't have guns, because I probably would have shot that tin up, all of us probably would have had a freak out. I think it was in God's plan that we did not have guns. So this thing, we just kind of looked at each other, and whatever it was, now this is just by sound, it seemed like it turned right or left, whatever it was, and it took off through the woods like a steamroller, breaking and busted everything completely. I mean, just disregard for sound, no regard for sound. And it just kept going until it faded out. And then up the trail where we started, there was this constant howling of an owl, or like a hooting of an owl, like a hoot owl. But you could tell it wasn't really a hoot owl. It was something kind of trying to sound like a hoot owl. So that was that night. Well, another thing that happened that night is there was a bunch of coyotes that you could tell they were in a hunting party, and they were yipping and yapping. And where we camped is on a plateau, downhill on all sides, northeast, west, and south, and not steep, but gradual downhill. So we slept on this plateau. These critters were coming at us, these coyotes, and when they got closer to us, they went completely silent, and we lost track of where they were. And then about another 2 minutes, 3 minutes later, they started yapping again, but they were on the complete opposite side of where we were, going away from us. So whatever it was made them shut up until they got away from where, we were in our situation. So needless to say, we did not sleep the rest of that night. That was good. And then the same night, it was the next night, and a coyote came to the camp, and again, we couldn't see it, but it howled and barked for a couple hours. And, a lone coyote does not do anything alone, and let alone come to a human camp and sit there and make an attempt to just keep barking. And it was, you could tell it was not a coyote. It was But, we all looked at each other and we were like, you know what? No coyote and no animal is going to come to a camp and sit there by itself and yippity yap. They don't do that. They hunt parties. That was another odd thing. So that's one of the situations. And then another situation that we found was we found a bedding area, and it was at a creek. And this was right next to the creek, and it was a tree. You know how a tree would fall over and the root balls stick up in the air?
Yeah.
And almost create like a cave, kind of.
Right.
Underneath that root ball was a bedding area that had been flattened out, and it was probably 10 feet long, and it was just smooth, hard-packed mud. What does that? Now, again, we're 5 miles from anywhere. We thought that was strange. That time we had weapons because we had gone back and we were loaded for bear. So after that first night when the creature screamed at us, in daytime you all said you get brave in the daytime because it's not nighttime. The monster's not coming to get you in the daytime. So my boys decided they were going to go back to the truck and get some more water because my water filter or my pump broke. That we got a filter system, so they had some bottled water they were going to go get. So they didn't come back for a while, a couple hours. I started hearing this rustling over in this little valley beside me, and then I heard this gigantic thud, and then thud, 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 And I started getting scared because I'm by myself, and all I had was that Fisker's axe, and I had made a spear, and I was sitting there before that thud. I was sharpening a spear on a rock. So I heard that, and all I could think of was that, okay, my kids are gone. Here comes this monster. He's pissed. He's going to eat me now because I was yelling for their name. And it's the only time that I've really been like thinking, okay, now I might really die because I'm here by myself. I've got nothing. So I took off jogging down the trail, another 3 miles, 4 miles back to where the truck was parked. And I get down there and it's almost dusk and the truck is gone. So now I've got to turn around and face my fears and go back to that camp. And it's starting to get dark. And, those fire trails, when you got the tree growth over it, it's like tunnels.
Right.
And everywhere you go, you just think, okay, here comes an ambush, here comes an ambush. So I just like, what? If I'm going to die, I'm going out like a berserker. And knowing that, all I just got to do is just squeeze my head and I'm down. But finally made it back up there. And they were looking for me. They had ropes tied around them because they thought I had a heart attack and fell somewhere. It was them. They were throwing logs and rocks down this ravine to scare me. And I was like, you little, what? So at that point, we decided that we will never again do any kind of Bigfoot pranks like that because I was just a mess, And we also decided at that point that we were going to go in the woods and do our thing again, but we're not going to look for this Bigfoot. If he wants to come see us, maybe he'll come see us, but we are not like going to go searching. We thought that was the cool thing to do, go find Bigfoot. After with that encounter, we decided, what? This isn't as cool as we thought it would be because when this thing roared, we knew that this could be life ending, I mean, it just makes you feel that. And I'm sure you've heard from many of your stories, those roars, how it rips through your body and it puts a primal fear in your soul. Some people piss their pants and crap themselves, and some people get the PSTD and start crying. But we decided, what, we're just going to keep on doing our thing, not showing any aggression. And on that note, my oldest son and I went again. We had a tent that was way too small for us. My youngest son said, this one will hold both of you. So we camped out. And our head was pushing through one end of the tent, and our feet were pushing out the other end of the tent, because we're both big guys. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up because he's saying, stop doing that, stop doing that. I opened my eyes, and the tent was almost touching my nose. It had been pushed down. It's like almost over my face. Whatever was going on, it popped back out. The tent popped back up. We're both yelling and stuff, but what was happening, he said, something was palming his head like a melon, just feeling it.
Oh. Through
the tent. Yeah, through the tent. It was just like positioning its hand around and feeling it like, I guess it felt interesting to this, whatever was going down there. And he was freaked out. We were both freaked out. We jumped out of the tent, and course, we were making so much noise trying to get out of the tent that, whatever was, it could have been herd elephants, we wouldn't have heard them.
Right.
That was one of the other encounters. The only physical time that I saw this creature was in '79 when I was on the motorcycle. It looked like a gorilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked like a gorilla with its back to me. It was sitting on its butt. And, of course, the more I think about it, all this time's gone by, the arms were way too long, in my mind's eye. That could be subjective from what I've seen and heard in the past. But yeah, that was it, man. That was it.
Wow.
So
you and your sons have a lot to talk about and reminisce on.
Yeah, because we tell people and they laugh, and we've told some people and they laugh, and we've got all this, well, you need to take us out there so we can be part of this and all that. It's like, you need to take yourself out there and be part of that. If you go with us and you start knocking on a tree, we might knock on your head because we don't want to take a chance on, whatever could be happening. Who knows? Is it a mating call? Who knows?
So you've had several encounters that you're pretty sure, or maybe you're 100% sure what's going on. Two things that I gathered from what you were saying. Number one is you're kind of critical of yourself for going and looking at them, but looking for them. But I think you're cutting yourself some slack as just not knowing at the time what you were looking for.
Yeah, exactly what it is. And now that I have encountered this thing, it's like, okay, we don't need to go out and research this thing. We know where it's at. We know what it does. And there's, not just one. This is just in the area that we were at. I think it might have been the same one or same group of them that was palming my son's head, or else maybe he would have squished his head. Maybe he recognized us or something, or smelled us. I don't know.
Yeah. I talked to a guy yesterday, actually did an interview yesterday. I haven't posted it yet, but he's had a lot of activity around his house in Texas. He lives in northeast Texas. And that was one of the big takeaways from my talk with him. He said, don't go looking for them. Why? Look, they're there. I know it's a hobby. I know it's a lot of fun to go camping and stuff. But he says, you're really putting yourself in a bad position.
I think so.
I mean, what would you say to all the people that just go hiking? I mean, people like me. I mean, I spend a lot of time out, and I never see anything.
Well, here's one thing. Yeah, I mean, they may be around you. You might not see them, but maybe one day you will. But mentally, you are way more prepared from all the stories that you've heard that you're not going to just 100% freak out and have a meltdown. Okay, you're going to see this thing and go, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you walk away, you will be happy and smiling and still a little in shock. You're going to be in shock for sure. But don't let that take you away from your life and your happiness and your God. And because I think that, it's all part of our creation. And I'm not going to let them force, you've heard hunters, I'm not going to let them force me out of my woods. I'll work with them.
I don't mean to sound insensitive. I don't mean to sound insensitive, but I'm a little bit with you on the PTSD thing because, I think there's a lot. My son was in the Marine Corps and he was in Afghanistan. He was way out front with a recon battalion, as a mechanized recon battalion. He got blown up a couple times with IEDs. They did a couple of assaults on towns. They were actually drugged. They were finding the drugs and this black heroin that those guys were selling down on the Pakistan border. Man, They went through a bunch of crap. Now, there's a guy, and he doesn't display he's doing fine. But there's some guys that he was with. Two of his buddies that he served with have committed suicide. And there's hundreds and hundreds of people. I mean, heck, we got riots going on around town. People are just taking women and pulling them out on the streets and beating them to death. There are people who have real PTSD, and maybe it's just me, but I can't see seeing a strange animal actually causing that much damage. But I'm not critical of people who have. It's just hard for me it's no different than it's hard for me to believe that Bigfoot vanished into thin air. It's hard. It's hard for me to believe. And so, again, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but I kind of follow your line of thinking on that. I'm like,
anything is possible.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And that's the way I look at it because, a lot of people say, well, what do you think? What kind of animal do you think it is? And I said, well, I personally am thinking it's more along the line of just a hominid that's got brains, has ESP, has super heightened senses. He's just not people. He's not human. But I think that he's here. I'm not, like I said, I think it's how you're wired and how you're brought up. If you're brought up with that you're going to be okay regardless of what happens, whether it be, your parents or your siblings or, just your faith in God. I think if you're wired for it, you're going to be able to come out of it. Because, you hear both sides of the coin. Some people freak out. Some people are like, okay, I'll deal with this. Let's do it again.
I'm not saying that it wouldn't be on my mind forever, going on a hike or going camping, things like that.
No.
So, yeah.
Listen here, Karen. You know that when you go on a hike, you know that your eyes, just from all your stories, your eyes are everywhere. Okay? Because you know of all these stories and how he could be right beside you, he could be in front of you. So your perception is already different when you take a hike in the woods, when you got the dogs with you.
I'm looking. I'm always looking.
Yeah, you're looking. Yeah. And as soon as you quit looking, you might get lucky.
Right. That's right. That's right. Well, we're getting close to an hour, and I just wanted to ask a couple of questions or get your input on a couple of things. And I don't have an opinion on what Bigfoot is or whatever. I'm trying to stay open-minded like you are, and I want to hear every possible aspect or opinion, because that's all we have. We don't have enough evidence to make a determination on anything. And I know there are people who say, well, I've lived with them for all these years and I know exactly what they are, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but you have to get that information has to get out, and it has to be verified, peer reviewed for that stuff to be kind of written in stone. And it could even change after that. But with all that said, what do you think these things are? And I know it's an opinion, but I'm just curious what you think they are.
I think it's just an old relic hominid that's been here forever, and it has all its senses and everything that we don't have to live in his environment. And that's why they're the masters of hide and seek and all that stuff that people say. I think that if they want to be seen, they'll be seen, and if they want to kill you, they're going to kill you. And people say they want to find them and get these to protect them. Protect them from what? From us? From us, because we're going to go kill them.
Yeah.
That's just the way it's going to be. Is if we bring them in, people are going to kill them. We're going to kill them. They're going to kill us. It's another war. That's just the human nature. And in history, the Indians said the same thing. We had to go kill them. They were stealing our kids, stealing our women. We had wars with them, and that stuff all makes sense to me. But as far as what they are, I believe that they're more than just a stupid animal or an ape.
Yeah.
I think they're just big, but super smart in their own animal way. They don't have our kind of brain power. It's a totally different thing. That's the way I see it.
And see, that's exactly the opposite of what I would expect someone who is interested in the woo-woo effect to say. I would think someone interested in, and see, that's how little I know. I would think someone coming from your excuse me. Oh, my dog is hacking up something here. I would think somebody coming from that perspective would say, oh, they're aliens from another planet, or they're some kind of supernatural being from Genesis or whatever. But
sure.
You've got a very pragmatic view of these things while still being interested in the woo-woo effect. I think that's great. I think that's awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. I was talking about the being scared. Well, those scary stories you hear about, people getting their houses slapped. To me, that's scary as anything. I'd be scared to death get my house slapped like that.
Yeah.
I've got a 10-foot window over my kitchen from where it goes to the ground outside, and I never had a blind in it. And then I started hearing your stories and stuff. I bought a blind, so in case I walked over there to the sink, I wouldn't be staring at one.
Oh, I cost you some money, didn't I? I cost you some money. Oh, man, that's funny. That's funny.
So anyway, that's my story. That's it.
Well, one last thing. How are your kids with all this? Are they still going, having fun in the woods and doing the things they love to do growing up?
Yep, absolutely. They've decided, we've all had talks about this, that nothing is going to bother us, and we do carry weapons on us, at all times, because we that one particular night that thing came to us, we had no weapons. That's the only time we've ever been in the woods with no weapon. I think it was just fate, because we might have created a situation that we didn't want. You never know until you get in that situation, but now we won't. I mean, if our thing is now is if one pops out in front of us, everyone better lower their weapon, because I think they probably know what's going on there. And then they can read you. And if their senses are working, they're going to know in your heart, does these guys really want to kill me, or are they just coming through?
Yeah, I talk about this every once in a while, but one of the people who, and I'm not a supporter or a non-supporter of Todd Standing, but he's real interesting to listen to in regards to Bigfoot. He's got I don't know if you'd call it just this vast wealth of knowledge, or maybe he's just well-versed in, all things Bigfoot. But one thing he always says that always catches my ear is, you can carry a gun, but if you shoot one, you're in big trouble.
And that's how I feel about it too.
And what's funny is everybody carries a gun, and they have Bigfoot on their mind. That's what they're thinking about. And I'm like, that's almost like it's almost like I don't know. It's two things that cancel each other out. You might be better off without one and just backing out. Because you never hear any stories of somebody just walking through the woods and them, like a mountain lion would, just jumping on their back and trying to kill them and eat them. They just seem to try to get you away from the area is what they're trying to do.
And I believe that. I think that's what they're trying to do. But like you said, I think if you fire on one, there's another one that's going to get you. And if you do shoot it and you kill it, and guess what? You're all going to die, because he's going to get you just based on adrenaline. He's going to rip you to shreds. But
it sure feels good having that smoke pole on your hip, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes you feel better than you really are.
That's what Wyatt Earp said. Skin that smoke wagon, boy. I've always thought that was funny. But, well, listen, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you doing this. I have been so anxious to talk to you since I got your email, and I'm glad we could work this time out. And I consider it a big favor to me. I tell this to everyone. You did me a big favor doing this, and I want to wish you well on your podcast. I'm going to be following along. I hope you'll text me a link or something to.
Oh, I will for sure. Yeah, you'll be in there.
Yeah, because I'm kind of like some other people. About a couple of nights a week, I'll lay in bed and just put my earbuds in when I can't sleep, and I'll just listen to different podcasts. Now, normally I listen to true crime podcasts, or I'll listen to audiobooks. I really don't. I try not to be influenced, and I don't listen to too much Bigfoot stuff, to be honest with you. Right. So I would enjoy, especially what you're planning to do on your first couple of episodes. That sounds really fun. Well,
I'll make sure that I get it to you, and if anyone's interested in writing these stories, you can send it to the Woo Effect podcast. I know that your newest adventure is going to be a big hit also, because dixiecryptid is big time.
Yeah, I'm going to announce our podcast probably in. I'm hoping to have it all up and running by the end of September. I've been saying that I've been working on this for about 6 months, and I'm trying to get everything just right. Trying to get a good. I just want to do it right, and I'm learning to build a website, learning Photoshop, uploading a podcast just through an RSS feed is a nightmare. You have to specifically upload it to all the podcatchers that you want it to be on. They have to approve it. They have to approve your art. It's a major deal, and I've wanted to go through Anchor or Podbean or something like that, but I really want to learn to do this myself. So, and if I learn it and you decide to go that route, maybe I can show you how to do it.
Absolutely, yeah, it would be a good thing for me.
Okay, everybody. Sure. You guys make sure and look for the Woo Woo Effect on Spotify. Scott Jenkins will be the host, and he sounds like he's got a good narration voice, and I'm anxious to see it. Scott, thanks again for being a guest, and everybody, thanks for listening to this far in the video. We sure appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.